Are there aliens? The answer depends on who you ask, with the authorities traditionally tending to say no. However, there are experts who have managed to gather lots of hard-to-refute evidence on aliens and UFOs. One of them is Bob Lazar, an icon in the world of UFOs and aliens. This brilliant mind has finally broken his silence on an alien warning that they are coming. What has Lazar said about aliens, and what is the fate of the Earth when they arrive? Stay tuned as we dive into what Bob Lazar has to say as he breaks his silence on aliens. The subject of aliens or extraterrestrial beings is a touchy one, with extensive efforts made to hide the truth from the general public. However, as hard as they may try, the truth still gets out in the end, thanks to the untiring efforts of some scientists. If you are familiar with aliens and UFO circles, one of the names you might have come across is Bob Lazar. Some people see him as a controversial figure, but that has not stopped many of his claims from being confirmed even years after he made them. This is a man who predicted the existence of an element on the periodic table before it was discovered, and not only was it discovered, but the properties fit just the way Lazar described it. Lazar also worked at some of the most restricted sites in the world where super-secret experiments and activities are carried out. Bob Lazar was born in 1959 in Coral Gables, Florida. He grew up in Southern California and attended Pierce Junior College and California State University, Northridge, where he studied electronics. After college, Lazar worked as a technician at Los Alamos National Laboratory in New Mexico, which is one of the country's foremost research facilities. He also worked at other high-tech companies and government agencies. In his early 20s, Lazar became interested in rocketry and propulsion systems, and he started building his own rocket engines in his spare time. This hobby eventually led him to apply for a job at a company called EG&G, which was a contractor for the U.S. Department of Defense. EG&G was looking for someone with experience in electronics and rocketry to work on a project that involved developing advanced propulsion systems for military aircraft. In 1982, Lazar was hired by EG&G to work at a facility called S4, which is located near Area 51 in Nevada. S4 is a highly secretive facility that is said to be involved in the testing and development of advanced aircraft and weapon systems. Of course, there is no official confirmation of this. One of the highlights of Lazar's career was working on a top-secret project that involved reverse engineering extraterrestrial technology. Lazar worked on 9 flying saucers that were of extraterrestrial origin. These saucers were stored in hangars built into the side of a mountain, and he could reveal this because he was given security clearance to work on them. Lazar claims that he was part of a team of scientists and engineers who were attempting to reverse engineer the technology in order to understand how it worked and how it could be replicated. While Lazar's personal life may leave much to be desired, his achievements cannot be written off. Interestingly, one of his major discoveries has landed him in trouble with the authorities that apparently want some things to remain hidden. Lazar's business and home would even be raided in this concerted effort to keep things as they are. This was how it began. On May 24, 1989, Lazar took the first steps toward becoming one of the most influential figures in UFO lore during a live interview with investigative reporter George Knapp on KLAS Las Vegas, concealing his identity and going by the alias Dennis.
What's going on up there?
Well, there's several, actually 9 flying saucers, flying discs.
Lazar claimed to have worked on recovered extraterrestrial spacecraft for the U.S. government, deep within an unconfirmed section of Area 51 known as S4. Months later, no longer hiding his identity, Lazar revealed that the U.S. government had launched an all-out covert war against him. He said they blew out one of his tires and razed all of his academic records from Caltech and MIT. Lazar later claimed that his job at Area 51 was to reverse engineer an alien material known as Element 115, which he claimed was used to power an alien spacecraft. Lazar has repeatedly hinted that he took a piece of Element 115 from Area 51, and that the federal government is very interested in this element. Lazar largely returned to private life in the years following his first appearance. He eventually founded a scientific supplies and equipment store with locations in New Mexico and Michigan. Interestingly, Lazar's company was raided by the FBI and local police while they were filming a documentary about Lazar's life. This has understandably raised the suspicion of Lazar and his fans, who believe that the FBI is attempting to recover samples of Element 115 that Lazar took from Area 51. It was an open secret that Lazar was under government surveillance, and this was the latest in the decades-long harassment campaign against him. Lazar joined Joe Rogan on his popular podcast. He had the opportunity to set a lot of things straight, and recounted how he ended up working at the famous Area 51.
The day Edward Teller, the father of the hydrogen bomb, was giving a lecture down there at the lab. And we didn't have much going on that day in our group, and I asked if I could go down there. And I went down there early, and Ed Teller was outside, leaning on a brick wall there and reading the front page of the paper.
Lazar said that he didn't even suspect anything unusual about his job initially, but some things started not to add up. He realized he had been working on alien technology. Lazar also talked about his first encounter with the reactor that produced a gravitational field of its own, which then powered the spacecraft. He said the machine looked out of this world despite being the size of a basketball on a metal plate. When trying to touch the machine, Lazar said it would push his hands away like two poles of a magnet with the same polarity. The more he tried to move his hand closer, the more his hand was pushed away. The encounter reminded Lazar of the briefing he had read on the project he was brought to work on. The job description was to try and reverse engineer this alien invention that required duplicating the technology with available materials at the time. To keep Lazar and his colleagues in the dark about what they were working on, the bosses compartmentalized everything, meaning Lazar was only working on a tiny bit of the whole thing. Without the whole picture, it was hard to know exactly what was going on. Lazar and his partner ended up with the power and propulsion system in addition to a sparse overview of what the other teams had been tasked with, but every bit was tied to the mysterious spacecraft. Lazar said the reactor could work automatically, sensing when it had a load or not. When there was no load, the reactor shuts down. Describing how sophisticated the reactor was, Lazar said there were no wires running around inside connecting the different components. He said the whole thing appeared to work by magic. He also hinted that the person he replaced at his work must have had a horrific accident, even causing the employee's death, although he was never given the whole details. Not even his partner would broach the subject. However, Lazar believed the accident was related to the work they were doing and must have happened as they tried different things with the reactor. Meanwhile, the reactor was not the only item available. Even though Lazar was only allowed to work on one, he said he was able to see 9 disc-shaped spacecraft in secluded storage. While they were roughly the same size, about 52 feet in diameter, and shaped like flat discs, he remarked that they all looked different. So how did this experience of encountering something from an alien world affect Lazar's life? Lazar said it was exciting, especially for a scientist in his 20s.
This is the only time it became exciting. You know, the rest of the time it was really an ominous feeling being at work. But at that time, it was exciting. I mean, now I knew we were on the absolute beyond the cutting edge of science. And I was so absolutely excited to be there every single time I was.
Lazar confessed that it was a dangerous thing because many things they were dabbling into were completely unknown. But when were these rockets acquired and how? Lazar said that information was tightly controlled and was not revealed to any of them, even though they worked on these machines every day. It was surreal, as Lazar put it, that they only had to reverse engineer the reactor without even knowing when it was obtained. However, the sparse documentation reveals where these machines came from. Lazar said they came from the Zeta Reticuli star system, codenamed ZR3. They tracked these things down to the 3rd planet in the star system. Other than that, there was nothing else, nothing on how the machines were obtained. Zeta Reticuli is a binary star system in the constellation Reticulum that can be seen in the night sky in the southern hemisphere. Zeta Reticuli can be seen clearly as a double star with the naked eye if viewed in sufficiently dark skies. The two stars, Zeta 1 Reticuli and Zeta 2 Reticuli, are about 39 light-years away from Earth and separated by at least 3,750 astronomical units. 1 AU is the average distance between the Earth and the Sun. The stars orbit a common center of gravity for more than 170,000 Earth-years, and are estimated to be between 1.5 and 3 billion years old. But what makes these stars so intriguing is that, in comparison to our Sun, they are very similar, making them so-called solar analogues and of interest to astronomers who can compare them to our solar system's host star. UFO enthusiasts know Zeta Reticuli as the home of a species of alien life forms that visited Earth in the 1960s and abducted a married couple named Betty and Barney Hill. Betty later drew an astronomical map of sorts based on what she claimed to have seen aboard the spacecraft, which has since become known as the Betty Hill star map, which some claim shows that the aliens in question originated from the Zeta Reticuli star system. So, did the authorities know where these objects came from? Lazar said, "They never revealed it." Lazar said one of the main interests of the investigation was getting to make the rocket work and also unraveling the type of fuel powering it, and this was where things got interesting. The fuel is a heavy element known as element 115. Lazar said that at the time there was no such element on the periodic table. However, the element was added to the periodic table in 2004 and named Moscovium because it was discovered in the Russian city of Moscow. Lazar, however, said element 115 used as fuel was different from the one later added to the periodic table in many respects. With all the time he spent at the facility, they were not able to figure out the alien machines. The problem was that the device violated every physical law that could be violated, Lazar said. The rocket never got warm, even though it was generating and using so much power. They also tested for magnetic fields and couldn't detect them either. However, Lazar said the guys were able to figure out how to operate the alien aircraft. Lazar described one operating test of the spacecraft that he witnessed. He wasn't part of the testing crew, but he happened to be on hand when the test was carried out, allowing him to see how it worked. Lazar said the spacecraft took off quietly. To his surprise, the only visual sign was a little corona discharge from the bottom. A corona discharge is a kind of high-voltage bluish glow discharge. This became visible as the spacecraft lifted about 5 or 10 feet from the ground. The glow appeared at about this height and it continued to hover silently. It moved to the right and left before settling back down. Lazar said the spacecraft had light bent around it thanks to gravity, but to his surprise, the handlers were able to communicate with the pilot inside, which shouldn't be. This was because its gravity bends light, enveloping the craft in such a way that all forms of energy are distorting. However, thanks to a technology that Lazar admitted he didn't know about, it was possible to communicate with the occupants inside the craft. Curiously, Lazar revealed that the test flights of the craft were carried out on Wednesdays, because statistically that was the day the highway near the facility had the least traffic. This meant the likelihood of an unauthorized person getting wind of what was taking place was reduced. However, some people not employed at Area 51 did get to witness the tests of these alien craft. This was another interesting footnote to Lazar's story. Lazar said he was booted out when it became apparent that his wife was having an affair. Do you wonder how the affair affected Lazar's career? Well, part of the terms Lazar agreed to was that his home telephone was monitored. This was necessary for him to get the security clearance he needed to work on the secret project. What this meant was Lazar's bosses knew about his wife's affair before he did. Another condition Lazar agreed to was that he must have a stable home life. So when his wife's infidelity came up, Lazar was gradually let go. However, Lazar wasn't just allowed to move on with the rest of his life. He said he started to get followed around by special agents, which greatly interrupted his personal life and caused him a lot of anxiety. Eventually, he reached a point where he could no longer hold everything in, so he confided in a few close friends about the job he had been doing. Of course, his friends would need evidence to believe the tall tales he was spinning. Who wouldn't think their friend has gone crazy when he starts talking about seeing and touching alien spacecraft? To convince them, Lazar decided to bring them along to the areas near Area 51 on the date that was scheduled for flight tests. Lazar testified that he brought carloads of friends to the area on 3 occasions to observe these secret tests. Some of the actions were also captured on camera, which he claims can be found on the internet and have been analyzed by experts. Lazar says the aliens that brought the spacecraft could have evolved technologically on a different path and at a different rate than us. He said the aliens in Reticulite could have started making progress technologically using the powerful element 115 as fuel. Starting from such a powerful fuel, it is not impossible for them to achieve a progression rate that we humans can only dream of. Lazar also states that he thinks technology will fuse with us humans at some point, and that it's already happening. Well, Elon Musk is bent on making that happen. His company, Neuralink, may start trials of his brain implant chip on humans this year after recording successful testing on animals. Let's hear your thoughts on the existence of aliens in the comment section below. And make sure to subscribe to Unknown Realms of Technology for more exciting videos.